And hello, welcome to the numbers game. Hi there. Coming across the wrong way, we understand that. This is our idea of Hollywood production values. I am David Camioner. This is Tim Blessing. Before we do anything, given that we're talking about politics, we're going to begin with a recreation of the so-called smoke film. So, see, he got there before I did.
I think this is somehow or another required for a serious political talk, even if it's about politics and football.
It totally is. Now, of course, with any smoke-filled room, oh, by the way, what are we smoking? Some of you might ask. This is an Opus X Lost City. Not a bad little cigar. So, anyway, now with any smoke-filled room, what do you need? You need whiskey. So, specifically bourbon. Specifically, Weller's 12.
I ask you, what good American politician would drink scotch when we can have American bourbon?
That's a good point. I mean, I love the Scots, but that sounds treasonous to me, actually.
Yes, yeah.
So, a little bit of this for me. A little bit of that for you. Get us in the proper mood to talk politics.
And we have politics to talk about.
Yeah, we do. So, Timmy, cheers, mate.
Cheers.
Now, what the hell is the numbers game? Well, politics is about numbers. I think we can see that every day on the news. Sports is about numbers. We can see that every weekend on sports shows from any sport you want. We're going to be concentrating on baseball. Excuse me, not baseball, which is a very boring sport. Sorry, George Will. But football, a very exciting sport. And what we're going to do is use sports to explain to people that maybe aren't into politics, because most people understand football. So we found the metaphors actually work. So that's the concept of the numbers game, using sports to explain politics. Now,
you know, David,
go ahead, Tim.
You and I have been in politics. You've been in politics 50 years, and I've been in politics 49 years.
That's true.
And one of the things we can say is that people don't understand politics.
No, they think it's about democracy. That's a joke. It's marketing 101. It's selling cornflakes. Is that a great comment on the human condition? Maybe it is, maybe it isn't. Is that a great comment in democracy? Well, I'd say if you want to learn about democracy, read Leo Strauss. Yeah. But we're not talking about that. We're not talking about government, okay? We're talking about politics, the game. We're also going to do it in a completely non-ideological fashion. I'm certainly center-right, if not more conservative than that. Tim has his own views. But that we're not interested. We want to do something where liberals, conservatives, Republicans, Democrats who are into sports and or politics can understand, comment, and appreciate it. Also, being into cigars and whiskey helps. Tim, while I drink, will you say something?
You know, being at the end of the day, you know, we can talk about being right, center right, center left, what have you. At the end of the day, the person who gets the most votes wins. Mm-hmm. And that's really where we are now. Dave is a longtime political operative. I already told you he was been in politics now for 50 years. I'm a professor of history, but I have a long background in politics. I'm a number cruncher. I'm one of those really dull guys who, you know, you see people run out from behind the scenes and hand somebody a sheet of paper. I'm one of the ones who put numbers on there. But I also help campaigns. Mm-hmm. Whereas David is, I don't know, I kind of think of him as Fran Tarkenton, crossed with, you know, the Don Coryell West Coast offense.
Well, I think the West Coast offense works. One of my heroes growing up. By the way, the 50 years thing might seem weird. My first election, and I'm 62 years old, was in 1970 when I was 9 years old stuffing envelopes for the Broward County Republican Party. So, in Florida. So, hence the 50. But, I did mostly media work. I ran campaigns, but when I was running campaigns, much like Churchill was both Prime Minister and Minister of Defense during World War II, I usually ran media, and I love broadcast stuff, and I ran a lot of campaigns, and I definitely did that. And Tim, I think you would consider yourself, given a football metaphor, who?
Oh, you know, I'm the offensive strategist. Mm-hmm. I'm not down on the field calling the plays, but I've got a sheet in front of me which tells us what the opportunities are. Mm-hmm. And sometimes you have to tell your candidate you don't have any opportunities, so let's do play B. You know, and that happens. But that's basically what I do, is I choose what plays can be run and what plays are likely to succeed.
That makes sense. By the way, if you're wondering about this stuff, over here in our background, here is an RAF Group Captain's cap that I've acquired. And the reason I acquired it goes even back to this metaphor, because of politics can be sports, history can be sports. And in the summer of 1940, less than 1,000 guys, perhaps the most underdog military team in history, saved Western civilization in the Battle of Britain, the Royal Air Force. So I'm a big fan, hence the cap. And also right under that, a man who played a big role in that, Winston Churchill, whose bust and likeness may be commenting today as well. As you're looking at Tim and I call this my Perry White look. If you're not old enough to get that reference, sorry. Tim, I don't know, you kind of have a U-boat captain thing working for you there.
Yeah,
which is a
I
nice
don't
look.
speak with a German accent, though,
Well,
so,
well,
but,
not in this your adopted country.
No,
That's
well,
specific.
anyway, we had to make a run for it.
This is true. By the way, if you're thinking how elections play into this sports metaphor, the primaries are the playoffs. Before the primaries, when people are coming in, coming out, raising money, that's the regular season. And of course, the primaries being the playoffs, the Super Bowl, it comes every November, 4 years, and of course every 2 years in November for other races for the presidency every 4 years. That's the Super Bowl, the general election, which of course we're having this November. So have we got our concepts and terms right here? This is politics and sports, so people can get it. It can be accessible to people. So what we're going to start doing here is talking about how we see, first of all, by definition, the parties. I'm going to handle that myself, and then Tim and I will go back and forth on other aspects of this entire presentation. And maybe not presentation, given we're drinking whiskey and cigars. Are we drinking cigars? Probably not, given we're imbibing, shall we say. So I see the GOP, and Tim came up with this, and I think it's a good metaphor, as the modern Packers. Now, if we think of the Packers and Aaron Rodgers, that's a great team. Rodgers is a great quarterback. However, they can't really seem to win. I think the last Super Bowl they won was in 2011. Yeah. Now, the modern GOP, even though we've had some very good quarterbacks, this is not ideological, but Trump in 2016 was a damn good quarterback. But since not 2016, in 2018, certainly in 2020, certainly in 2022, have the Republicans really won a game? Yeah, we've picked up stuff. We picked up the House here and there, but it's been a lot of disappointments. I think a lot of Packer fans out there under Aaron Rodgers would consider it disappointments. And the Dems, well, that's easy. And I came up with this, and shall we say, our pre-conversations. By the way, this whole thing is live. We're doing this in one take, so hopefully you'll like it. And if you do, since we're going to be posting this all around social media, Facebook, blah, 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 hit a like or a love. Oh, hold on. That is somebody actually calling in, which means I'd have to answer that phone. That's my wife's name, Cynthia, by the way. And I forgot to tell her that this will block. Hello, I see it. I forgot to tell her that not to call at this point. Okay, there it goes. So, anyway, so the Dems remind me of the 1960s Raiders, the Oakland Raiders. Remember those guys? Jack the Assassin Tatum, a dirty team. A team that wanted nothing, would win at all costs. A team that just took it to you and rammed it down your throat, to use perhaps an unfortunate metaphor. And thus, that's how I see the Dems. A disciplined team, a hard team. They could be a dirty team, but they're a team that plays to win. As opposed to Republicans, who, of course, we all know, are famous for snatching defeat out of the jaws of victory.
You know, the Dems used to have, still have, gray and black uniforms, and they were proud of the fact that they were the Pirates.
That's right.
That's that. In fact, they called themselves that, the Pirates of the NFL.
Remember, for those of you that are around our age, Sundays, I believe it was at 12:30 in the afternoon when we were growing up, 60s and 70s, NFL films. Remember, and you can probably find it on YouTube. The Winter by John Facenda of NFL Films, which with Sam Spence doing the music. The Autumn Wind is a Raider. If you've never seen that on YouTube, look it up. It's great stuff. But that really gets to the point of these guys completely determined to win, disciplined, and will do anything they have to. Where sometimes, it's been my experience as a generally Republican consultant, mostly in Pennsylvania, but in other places as well, that many Republicans would prefer to lose gracefully than to win.
And that is a recipe for losing.
Mm-hmm.
And so, anyway, you know, we have to go to the primaries. They're trying to kill the primaries on the Democrat side right now. You may know that in Florida and places like that, they literally are saying that Biden's the only one who's allowed on the ballot. So basically, you know, that's pretty much in keeping with the Democrat DNA, because they want to win. And, you know, they do have a winner. Joe Biden has won, despite the fact that he was, I believe, 76 or 77 the first time he won. So who do we have on the Republican side? Let's look at the challengers. We know who the big guy is, but you know, Haley. And Haley is, you know, she's kind of like the master of the air game. In Iowa, she spent more money on ads than the other two candidates, Trump and DeSantis. And I got to tell you something. She reminds me a great deal of the old San Diego Chargers. Good quarterbacks never won. Started one season 4, lost the next 11 games or something like that. And so, you know, basically we could call her Air Coryell, except for the fact that it should be Air Haley. DeSantis. DeSantis reminds me of the 70s and 80s Chicago Bears. 32 times between the tackles. You knew, infants in hospitals knew what the next play was going to be with the Bears. And with DeSantis, you know what the next play is going to be. He's going to sound like Donald Trump, only he's going to be nicer. And how's that worked for him so far?
I got a question for you. I think, again, given my ideological tendencies, DeSantis has been a relatively good governor of Florida.
Yeah.
And you'd think, much like Reagan did with California, you know, he made him so viable, you'd think he'd be really beating the crap out of Haley. You really think he would. But I don't know. Maybe it's just because I'm seeing it, first of all, obviously, from the outside, but I'm also watching the debates. Does DeSantis come across to you as uncomfortable on the debate stage?
All the time.
Yeah, too programmed, too reading the talking points from his handlers.
Can you imagine DeSantis turning to Mondale and saying, "I won't make an issue of your age"?
Yeah,
I mean, that's hard to believe.
Yeah, he's stiff. One of the last debates, he was almost robotic with his lines. I mean, almost robotic. And when he went after Haley, she kind of brushed it off, and he had this almost like he was uncomfortable there. Plus, again, the guy looks like I think he's been a good governor. You know, and I'm quite sure there are people that would disagree. Fine. But he looks almost like he doesn't want to be liked. He seems so nervous, so squirrely up there.
You know, a lot of people say that when DeSantis debated Newsom, who you're going to take in just a few seconds, that Newsom won. Well, I listened to that on radio, or actually I listened to it on the internet. If you listen on the internet, it sounded like DeSantis won. But if you saw it in the flesh, then Newsom won.
So we're talking Kennedy Nixon 1960.
Kennedy Nixon.
Yeah, and I can see. I watched it, but I can see how that would totally work. Yeah, but and the thing about the Democrats, going back to the Raiders in the 60s comparison we did, is that DeSantis said what some people would think complete untruths, and they may or may not be, again, but he stayed on message. He was kind of scornful, but didn't quite come across as smug or patronizing. The guy is a Hollywood candidate. He is slick. He is a good messenger, and he could give any Republican a run for their money unless the Republican was smart enough to use California as a metaphor for Newsom himself. Going back now, because we kind of skipped a step, to Trump himself. And Trump, the way I see it, given the sports metaphor, Trump reminds me of Joe Namath and the '69 Jets. Have only won one Super Bowl, 1969. Some of us may remember, and I was at 8 to 1969, that Joe Willie Namath from Western Pennsylvania, Beaver Falls, if I remember.
Falls, right?
Yeah, coal country, isn't it?
Yeah, it is.
Told everybody, it was the Super Bowl was in the Orange Bowl in Miami against Don Shula's Baltimore Colts. He said he'd guarantee to win. He said, I'm going to beat these guys. And nobody thought. I mean, the Colts at Shula.
It was like a 16-point line.
Yeah, and was Unitas still playing for the Colts then?
Well, he was injured.
Oh, he was injured. But it was, nobody thought this kid out of Alabama could take on the Colts. He guaranteed it, and he did it. Remember Trump at 16, coming down the escalator, boundless confidence. Everybody thought he was a clown. I thought he was a clown. And he pulled it off. He pulled off that great Super Bowl. And then after that, the Jets pulled anything else off since 1969 and the Super Bowl? Nope. Has Trump pulled anything else off since 2016? Dear Lord. I mean, lost, which a lot of presidents do, Congress, his first midterms, then lost the election. Lost, arguably you can say, in 21, lost both seats in Georgia. He just, and it's been not just Trump, but the Republican Party itself, they keep talking, or we keep talking, the pundits keep talking about all these opportunities they have, and again, they never seem to come to fruition. They always seem to grab defeat out of the jaws of potential victory. And Trump seems that way to me too. Big game, a lot of money, people are fanatically loyal to him, but can he really grab the brass ring? Can he do it again? 16 was a certain time, a certain place. You had Brexit, you had a lot of things that toward a populist, anti-establishment message, and Trump rode that wave beautifully. That wave is no longer what it once was.
No, and and when you compare Trump to Biden, Biden again, we're using his first metaphors here, but he reminds me of the Chicago Bears in the '70s and the '80s. 32 times you run between the tackles. It's just really Biden is a safe, steady player. But having said that, what's coming, and I think I said that at the very beginning here, is that even the infants in the maternity ward knew what the next play was going to be. Is he a good president? I don't know. Only history is going to tell us that. But I can tell you that I know what he's going to do before he does it. And the trouble is the Republicans don't seem to be able to do that, which is just horrifying to me. That somebody who is so predictable, the other party can't figure out what the hell is going on.
It's just amazing. And also toward their vulnerabilities. You and I have talked about this numerous times. When I was an active Republican consultant, media consultant, I tried to interest Republican Party honchos into going after this. They could strip away blacks and Hispanics, because blacks and Hispanics, and I'm Latin myself, my folks from South America, are ultra-conservative, most anyway, on social issues. And the Latin vote, specifically, is not monolithic, not at all. Cubans and South Americans generally vote conservative, Republican. Puerto Ricans, Mexicans generally vote, Democrat. But they're all very conservative on things like abortion, on things like gay rights, certainly on transgender issues. And if the Republican Party got over being afraid of the editorial team on the Washington Post and afraid of not being invited to the right Georgetown cocktail parties, and if they actually went after on social messages, even if it was a, shall we say, surgical strike right before an election, and went totally, nailed them to the wall on social issues, specifically with black evangelicals and specifically with Latins, they could probably pry away 5 to 10% of the vote.
I would say, and you and I have just barely touched upon this in our own private conversations, but if you take a look, the Hispanic/Latin vote, and it's split, and there is no one Hispanic Latin vote, but immigration. It is entirely possible that if the Hispanic/Latin vote turns out, they will become the mainstay of the Republican Party. That's perfectly within the realm of possibility. People talk about white male Christians voting for the Republicans, but in reality, your Hispanic Latin vote is Christian, Catholic, conservative, sociologically. And so would be easy for that particular slice of the Hispanic Latin vote to become the mainstay of the Republican Party.
It really would. And I'm not saying the Republican Party has to go Yahoo on social issues. I tend to be libertarian on social issues. But I'm saying they need to market a specific message to a specific groups, because remember, this is marketing. Again, this is not a civics lesson. There's an old line in politics: if you want to send a message, go to Western Union. This is marketing. Of course, that meant a telegram, and who these days sends telegrams, or even some people who know what a telegram is. Beside the point. But you've really got to understand there are ways they can rip some of these people away. They can. We keep hearing about the suburban female vote. The Democrats have, and liberal Republicans, let's say like Arlen Specter moons ago, have done well with that. So the Democrats are taking people that maybe should be voting naturally Republican, upscale, college educated, these and that, and they're turning them around, especially on social issues like abortion. The Republicans could play that game on the opposite side, and they mostly, not all of them, that they mostly refuse to do, and naturally they refuse to do it.
Well, there's been a whole series of articles that the Republican Party is becoming the party of the lower middle class and lower classes, while the Democratic Party is going the other way. The trouble is, the Democratic Party now, and they're beginning to recognize that they have a trouble in the inner city, they have a trouble in the Rio Grande and Yuma Valley and other places where immigrants settle. So they are beginning to make attempts to keep those voters, turn them out, hold on to them. But whether or not they can do that and still be part of the college career population, I have no idea.
Yeah, by the way, trying to do the whole smoke-filled room thing, this is a big room, it's got decent ventilation. My blessed wife is one of the few females that lets me actually smoke pretty much anywhere I want in the house. We're kind of in the middle of the dining room right now, using part of my library as a backdrop, but we're not kind of getting the smoke-filled let's say, convention of 1920. That was Harding, wasn't
Harding.
it? Yeah, that I'm really looking for. Anyway, beside the point. So let's keep going on with our metaphors. The last thing we talked about vis-a-vis the primaries is Biden, I think, is the 80s Bears,
Yeah,
right?
right.
Okay, so let me talk about a scenario, which a lot of people say is going to happen, a lot of people in the Democratic Party, where Joe Biden is not the nominee. He resigns, he pulls an LBJ after New Hampshire, whatever happens, he resigns for health reasons, this and that. Then you're going to have a civil war in the Democratic Party between the woke types who will demand Kamala, I think it's Kamala.
Kamala.
Yeah, Kamala Harris, and Newsom, the governor of California, Gavin Newsom. And I think in a primary like that, because let's be honest, look at Harris's numbers. Yeah, within a certain group that, shall we say, is the, call it what you will, the party, sorry, just fixing my bra strap here, thank you, wants her, be perfectly frank, because of demographics. Okay, fine and dandy if that's what you want. But that might not play, they definitely won't play with a larger electorate, and it might not play, I don't think it'll play with the superdelegates and other delegates in the Democratic Party.
You probably should tell our viewers what a superdelegate is.
Oh, okay, it's a good point. Superdelegates are the party bosses, the honchos. That the Dems have Republicans have superdelegates?
No.
I don't think so, yeah. Who are the people who are supposed to be a break on the crazies. They're the old party guard. They're the consultants. They're the former elected official. Think Hillary Clinton, massively influential superdelegate. And so they're supposed to do that. Where would Hillary Clinton go? Newsom and Harris, one of the amusing things about Hillary Clinton, who started off in the 60s, of course, as, I wouldn't say a radical, but certainly very left of center, going after the establishment, Hubert Humphrey. Now she is the establishment. And so that must be amusingly ironic to us, and not so amusing to
Well,
her.
if you think about it, the Clintons were the outliers when they were elected in '92, and now they're the establishment.
Exactly.
So
Which-
that's
yeah, I mean, he was one of the first.
Well, that's like Aaron Rodgers going to the New York Jets.
There you go.
Suddenly this team that hasn't won since '69 decides, well, that Green Bay quarterback, he's not winning at Green Bay, or he's not winning the Super Bowl at Green Bay. So, but let's bring him here.
Let's see what we can do with him. And so far, did he get injured or something? What happened?
He was injured the first play of the first game.
Yeah, well, so that's the kind of thing we're talking about. And Newsom, I really think could give people a run for their money. And look, we're all fans of democracy, even though this is a Republican form of government. Don't count Newsom out. If somehow he got the nomination, which I think he could, versus Harris. Even though the state of California is, by many people's reckonings, looking at the numbers, abysmal, don't count Newsom out. That man is sharp. He is slick. The Dems have a stranglehold on most of American culture. Do not count Newsom out if by chance nominee.
Newsom is an expert on media.
Yeah, he's good. So, and also somebody that's been talked about relatively recently, somebody that would pose a massive threat to the Republicans is Michelle Obama. With Barack pulling the strings in the back, a unifying candidate, black female, that keeps the Harris people happy, and and the way her husband was elected, she could be elected. And I know that seems ridiculous. She has very little expertise in this kind of thing, though she was right next door, as Hillary Clinton became senator and a presidential nominee and Secretary of State after the Clinton administration. Do not count Michelle Obama out. Personally, I don't see that as a great comment on the American political scene, but that's just me. Other people have legitimate differences of opinion. So we talked about Newsom, and I kind of see Newsom in the football metaphor as the Cowboys. Why? Because half of America will probably hate his guts. But Newsom plays so well, as do the Cowboys on occasion, that it doesn't matter. Plus, media savvy. The Dallas Cowboys cheerleaders. They're, if you look around, these people know marketing, they know merchandising. Newsom would be tough. And the other guy that's looking very interesting in a wild card sort of way is Bobby Kennedy Jr. I'm thinking Bobby Kennedy Jr. is much like the Packers of the 60s. JFK, RFK, the Packers under Bart Starr, they were a force to be reckoned with. But, as we mentioned about the Packers, that banner is lying tarnished on the ground. Bobby Kennedy Jr. wants to pick it up. In fact, if you see some of his campaign videos, it starts out with quotes from his dad, with sound bites from his dad and his uncle. And let's think about him since the 60s. Teddy, got his ass kicked by Jimmy Carter, of all people, in the 80 primary. Joe, congressman, didn't put a lot of people on fire. Though I guess Teddy put a lot of people in water, so it kind of
Fire and water.
Yeah, exactly. So anyway, so yeah, they're trying to reestablish a dynasty that has fallen into disrepair. Can the Packers do it? Can Bobby Kennedy do it? Well, I don't think the Packers are going to do it this season. In fact, are they in the playoffs at all?
I actually can't tell you.
Neither one of us know.
But you can see how well the Packers are doing because neither one of us happen to remember
Yeah,
whether or not
exactly.
the Packers are in. You know, they haven't actually been contenders since 2011.
Yep. So who's, out of curiosity, and mine is the Saints, who's your favorite NFL team?
You know, actually, the truth is the Packers.
Really? Okay. And I like the Packers. I really do. I mean, other teams that I've always liked the Chargers for some reason, probably because of the West Coast,
Yeah, wow.
Coryell offense. Yeah, I'd have to go with the Saints for just a lot of reasons. I spent some time in New Orleans, loved it. Just like those guys, loved Drew Brees, and kind of a consummate professional. But anyway, that was beside the point. So, what can RFK do? Well, let's think about it. RFK is an independent. He draws from both Trump and he draws from Biden. And if he starts really getting some traction, especially somewhere like South Carolina, on the nostalgia side, he convinces especially black voters that there was still something left of the Kennedy magic. I think he's going to hurt Biden a lot more than Trump, though he will hurt Trump, but sometimes too. Bobby Kennedy is someone to look at. I think he's going to stay in it. The family has the money to stay in it. Bobby Kennedy, he won't be Ross Perot with 19% in 92.
That would be hard.
Yes, but he could make, in a close election, 4 or 5% could make a difference.
Well, the thing is the Democratic get-out-the-vote machine is probably the most sophisticated in history. And the Republicans are trying to catch up, and they are catching up a small amount. But the reality is Bobby Kennedy has to fit in between the Republicans and the Democrats because both sides have get out the vote. He's starting from ground floor, so he's got to somehow or another get in between them in order to suck in the edges of the parties.
And can he do that? I mean, though one thing, I have read a lot about Kennedy. I heard his voice for the first time on a video, a campaign, introduction video a couple of days ago. Have you heard his voice?
No.
I guess he had some kind of medical problem, and his voice is very gravelly.
Yeah.
It's certainly not Boston, like Bobby and Jack. Very, very gravelly. I wonder if that's going to play at all because he's trying to do this.
Well, if you look at Churchill's voice,
That wasn't gravelly.
what was that? That was deep.
Well, one.
Deep timbre.
Well, deep. Well, I mean, if you listen to Churchill, really, really listen to him, as opposed to seeing him portrayed on films like Darkest Hour, great movie, though took some liberties with history. Churchill's voice was more high pitched than you think. I mean, it was, and we keep hearing Churchill speaking of, we shall fight them in the heroes, we shall fight them in the streets. If you really listen to him, it was more, we shall fight them in the heroes, we shall fight them in the streets. It was much more high pitched than you'd think. But so a voice given a guy, who needs the magic and stuff, doesn't quite. He looks good, and it has a movie star, television star wife, and everything. But that voice, I really wonder about that. How that's going to play in.
I also wonder how he's going to play with the younger voters because he has a lot of views that are going to attract a certain group of younger voters, maybe college campus voters.
That could be.
And the Democrats need college campus vote to turn out. They also need what's called the career vote to turn out. That would be your lawyers, your high-level accountants, people like that. So, who knows? Yeah,
and the thing, about that is that, Bobby Kennedy is certainly progressive when it comes to environmental issues.
Yes.
And he has long history of National Resources Defense Council, etc. And that is, again, as Tim just mentioned, going to play with a lot of younger voters. It really, really is. So everybody wondering if these are braces that keep my pants up and in other circumstances. And given, of course, you only see us from the waist down, it doesn't matter right now. So beside the point. I do a lot of that, don't I? Anyway, so yeah, Kennedy could be interesting to watch. Tim, what do you think about West and Stein?
Continuing with our football metaphor, we talked a lot about who are West. First off, you need to know who they are. Cornel West is an independent who's very, very well-spoken man. Very well-spoken, very clear, very concise. Love to listen to him.
Harvard academic, isn't he? Is it Harvard?
I actually can't tell you.
It's not Cornell.
It's not Cornell.
So,
but and actually, he is kind of a free-floating intellectual who does all kinds of things. But to try to come up with a metaphor like this. But then it hit me He reminds me of, some of you may remember this guy. He's about 5'7" tall, and he played. He of course has the famous Hal Flutie pass, Doug Flutie, of in 1984 again as a college quarterback. Wins the Heisman.
Who did he play for? BC, was it?
Yeah, Boston College.
Yeah.
Yeah, and tries it in the NFL. Well, how many 5'7" quarterbacks? They say 5'9" on the program. He's 5'9" in his high heels. Trust me, he's not 5'9". I've met him. I towered over him, and you can see that I'm not the tallest person on the planet. But he can't make it in the NFL. He ends up going to the Canadian Football League, which, if you think American football is fast and frantic and all that, try the CFL. They have 3 downs to get a first down. It's all passing, and it's crazy passing stuff, and the field is a little bit wider. He ran all over the field and became the player of the year something like 6 times up there.
Huh.
So and ends up, by the way, you know his last play?
No idea.
Drop kicked a football for the first time since 1941.
Nice touch.
But that's really Stein. Those are really your kind of outer limit. Are they going to win? No. Are they going to win a state? No. Are they going to influence what happens? Yes.
Could they be Ralph Nader, just like Bobby Kennedy? Could they be Ralph Nader in Florida in 2000? Right. I mean, that is the danger with the Dems. Right now, we see polls putting Trump and Biden, if we're talking both of them as nominees, neck and neck, 1 or 2%. At Bobby Kennedy, 6 or 7% off, mostly Biden's, especially with the last 2 we're talking about, Stein and West, could really hurt Biden. Two notes there. One, during the 2016 race, I was in Philadelphia and spent some, shall we say, sightseeing in the Democratic environs. One of the events that I had the most fun at was a Jill Stein rally.
I know. Really? I've never known anybody who went to a Jill Stein
yeah,
rally.
it was great. First of all, these people, a lot of young people, very anti-establishment, as you might guess, but their anti-Hillary rage was so evident. In this crowd of thousands of people in Philadelphia, and I talked to people there, they had no, of course, these days they probably would, but they didn't really have an opinion one way or the other on Trump. But because she was the epitome to them of the Democratic establishment, they absolutely hated Hillary Clinton with a passion. And one wonders if they feel the same way about Joe Biden, because he is also very, very established.
From the scenes I'm seeing, I'm a college professor, and I would say the answer to that is possibly yes.
Yeah, I mean, Also, the thing about Doug Flutie, you know what he's doing these days? Well, as a person over 60, I watch a lot of Law and Order, and about every half an hour, you will see Doug Flutie in a commercial for basically erectile dysfunction. Yeah. That is what Doug Flutie is doing these days. So, I mean, that's his raised endorsement contract. Good for you, Doug. So we talked about Stein, we talked about West. Let's talk about no labels. And they're on the ballot in more than several states at this point.
At least 10 the last time I checked.
There you go.
Which was about 2 weeks ago.
And we're talking about guys like Joe Manchin. We're talking about guys like Larry Hogan, former governor of Maryland here in Annapolis, Maryland.
Very popular former governor.
Yeah, I like the guy. Yeah, I like the guy a lot. I like the way he governed. I like his demeanor. And we're also talking in the background Joe Lieberman, who's a guy I've always liked. In fact, I've always wondered in 2000 if it had been Lieberman Gore, not Gore Lieberman. I wonder if Joe Lieberman would have won. I might have voted for him at that point, as opposed to George W. Bush.
Yeah, if you listen to Lieberman's interviews, he comes across as being infinitely sane.
Mm-hmm.
And I think right now, given the chaos with Biden and is he healthy and all that stuff, and of course Trump brings chaos. Haley's right. Trump brings chaos wherever he goes. I wonder if Lieberman wouldn't have a good shot.
Mm-hmm. So who are
at least a reasonable shot.
Yeah, a reasonable shot. And again, we add him and he would take from both sides, I think, relatively.
That's right. He would have that middle, which I was talking about.
Yep. And you take Stein and take West and take Bobby Kennedy, mostly taking from the left, take no labels, and have them also taking at least some from the left.
Plucking off the Manchin wing of the Democratic Party.
Exactly, the white working class wing, the
That's
people
right.
that Trump needs very badly. And again, this is like the election of 1860. What, 4 or 5 guys in?
4 or 5 guys.
It's a complete crapshoot. Who knows? Now, using our football metaphor, who are no labels? Well, a question I had, because I see them, they're a young team. They're just, they're just putting their feet on the ground, shall we say. And so I Googled and asked my personal assistant there on Google, who, by the way, is a female British accent, who are the youngest team in the NFL right now? And the surprising answer, Tim and I were both surprised, are the Packers. The Packers right now are the youngest team in the NFL.
Yeah, when I think of the Packers, I think of old men who've made their bones.
Mm-hmm.
I was completely surprised that my Packers were the youngest team in the league.
I mean, we're within relative age proximity. And when I think Packers, I think Bart Starr, I think Nitschke, I
sure.
think all the Paul Hornig, Lombardi, of course. I think of all those guys, but not today. They're a very young team.
Yep.
And so with the young team, a lot of drive, a lot of passion. And again, in this middle, they can take away from much, especially white working class. You put Hogan in there, he takes suburban Republicans, especially females who like his moderate tone. And again, it makes the whole thing, November this year, into a crapshoot.
Well, and let me take that note, label things a little bit further. If you have a no labels candidate like Manchin or Hogan or one of those, Southern Ohio suddenly puts Ohio in play because no labels is going to be popular in Southern Ohio, Southern Indiana. When was the last? Well, yeah, in 2008, Indiana voted Democratic, but it's a Republican state, except for the fact that if you put no labels in there, who knows what's going to happen.
Do you think no labels could take a state, take some electoral votes?
Yeah.
Which ones?
I would think they would have a shot at Ohio,
Michigan.
no, absolutely, and Wisconsin.
What about West Virginia? I know it's deep red, but Manchin's from there.
Yeah, if it's Manchin, it's quite possible that he would win easily.
Yep. I think the smarter move is Manchin Hogan. Though I like Larry Hogan a lot, smarter move is Manchin Hogan. They could really create some problems from both sides.
Both of them come across as being infinitely sane.
Yep.
They are not the screamers on the right and they're not the screamers on the left. And really, I think American people right now want peace.
Mm-hmm.
Let us have peace.
Yeah. What is this 68?
Yeah.
Which is interesting because if you watch Trump in his victory pronouncement after Iowa, he was very un-Trump. He was gracious, said good things about DeSantis and Haley. We remember the new Nixon of 1968 and we'll see it, of course, Trump is going to be Trump, but perhaps he's toned down a little on the insanity. Perhaps this is the new Trump of 2024. You think so?
I'm sure the people around Trump right now are saying, take some tranquilizers, man. Keep it calm. Keep it down. And truthfully, he was a TV personality. He does know how to talk to the camera. And if he can hold it together, which I have some doubts about, but if he can hold it together, and there actually is a good path for victory for him. If he holds it together.
If he holds it together. Yep. So let's talk about something that we both find interesting. We'll term it our word of the day.
Mm-hmm.
Now, this is not...
And this is not ideological.
Yeah, and there's nothing to do with football, by the way, or nothing to do with the sports metaphor. But we've heard this term bandied around, and this is not the first time you've heard people say it, but perhaps the first time in this context. Our word of the day is insurrection. Now, we all saw what happened on January 6th. It was horrible. It was disgusting. It was just, it was beyond the pale. But was it, and I see it as a riot, as vandalism, as breaking and entering. Was it an insurrection? Because where I come from, especially my Latin American folks, you have an insurrection, you have a junta. You take control of radio and TV. You've got guys with Spanish wraparound shades and peaked caps having press conferences. Okay. I saw none of that on January 6th, nor have I seen it since. This was not an insurrection. They weren't trying to take over the government. They were trying to, granted, stop a legitimate procedure for electing a president, but there was no armed attempt to take over government like we see all the time in Asia and Africa, we used to see in South America. I don't see this as an insurrection at all, and every time the Dems use it, they are getting over.
And I got to be a college professor for a second. If you look at Title 10 of the U.S. Code, it defines an insurrection. And an insurrection occurs when the normal judicial processes will not function. Well, the first actual break-in, where they actually broke into the Capitol, occurred at 2:13. Trump calls for peace at 4:17. That's a 2-hour and 4-minute insurrection. That's not an insurrection.
Yeah.
And they didn't try to grab the media. They didn't try to grab the TV station. They didn't try to grab the radios. This is chaos, and it was directed in one direction, but it's still chaos. It wasn't an
It's
insurrection.
chaos. And let's just go on a limb and say it was an insurrection with the people we saw there. How long was that going to last? I mean, I think Fort Myer has a combat infantry or combat mech unit there. They'd have been, we'd have seen tanks up Pennsylvania Avenue, Frog marching Trump and the rest of his supposed insurrectionists into federal prison, or at least into custody, within
Into custody,
6
yeah.
hours. So even if it was an insurrection, was it going to last a hell? In fact, I remember was it 1990? No, it was 1991. When the hardliners tried to take over in Russia, and Yeltsin got on top of his tank.
How'd that work out?
Yeah, exactly. Some of you might remember in the 70s
3 days.
when some very bizarre colonel, as Spain was switching from Franco to democracy, tried to take over there.
Trying to take over the assembly.
Yeah, he got up there and was, doing his spiel, went nowhere. That was an attempted insurrection. And those guys were actually the military. They probably had a junta in waiting.
Right,
We've seen
yeah.
successful insurrections, and certainly as a coup d'etat. Go ahead.
When they were leading the fellow out, and I've forgotten his name, when they were leading him out, he said, well, this is 20 years for me.
Yeah, I
know.
mean, come on. And one of the guys that I like, and this will not be exactly catnip to many people, is Augusto Pinochet. That was an insurrection. That guy had a peaked cap. That guy had his people waiting. That guy, I mean,
He had the army, he had the media, he had everything.
yeah, and whether you like Pinochet or not, I personally would find it very amusing to throw communists out of helicopters. That was an insurrection. This was a riot. This was breaking everything. As Tim said, this was chaos. This, by my definition and by the professors here, was not an insurrection. Some will agree, some will disagree. Fine and dandy, no problem. So,
No.
that wraps it up for us. If you like this, and we'll be posting this all over the place, YouTube, social media, give it a like and let us know how you feel about it. We're going to try to do these on a regular basis. Right now, given logistics, Tim lives in Pennsylvania. I live here in Annapolis, Maryland. It may not be as soon as we like, though we'll try to make it perhaps monthly, something like that. So if you like it, let us know you like it. We'll do some more. We'll update you on these things as the primaries happen, as New Hampshire happens, as Super Tuesday happens, whatever happens with the Dems, if Biden stays in, stays out, Newsom, whatever goes on, we'll try to keep you updated on that. Again, using sports metaphors because both games are politics and football. Politics and sports are numbers games. So, from the number game, this is David Camioner.
And Tim Blessing.
And hey, thanks. Now, of course, given our brilliant Hollywood production values, I actually have to get up and turn off my phone that we're recording on. So, Tim, just blather on about something while I do that.
I don't have to blather on. I think this is going to be a close election. No, with all these candidates in the field, nobody has the slightest idea who's going to win this. And by the way, don't trust the polls, because the polls don't understand the get out the vote tactics that the Democrats and the Republicans are using. So they're not counting people correctly.
Yeah.
So they may hit it, and they may not.
So, and as a completely final word, we bring out, that's right, Winston Churchill. Listen to these people. Listen to them. Like and love what they do on social media. We shall fight apathy. We shall fight illogic. We shall fight irrationality in the hills, in the streets, in the precincts, and more than anything else on this show.